intelligence colonel. But an American auto parts supplier has confirmed Whelan is the company's director of global security. The U.S. has repeatedly said there is no evidence against him and asked for his release.
Atlanta police released dramatic footage of an interaction between two officers and Richard Brooks. Brooks was shot dead by police as he tried to escape arrest.
You had about 1.5 drinks.
Atlanta police on Sunday released this video that showed the moments leading up to the fatal shooting of Richard Brooks, whose autopsy reportedly showed he was shot twice in the back. Footage from Officer Devin Brosnan's body cam shows him waking Brooks, who was asleep at the wheel of a car in a Wendy's drive-thru lane.
Hey, you're parked in the drive-thru right now. Hey, sir. You right?
Nothing whatsoever.
Once fellow officer Garrett Rolfe arrives, the video showed the two officers questioning Brooks.
All right, just take a deep breath in.
And then performing a sobriety check.
I think you've had too much to drink to be driving.
The situation then quickly spun out of control. The video then showed Rolfe attempting to put handcuffs on Brooks, who struggled with the two officers before breaking free and running across the parking lot. A second videotape from the restaurant surveillance cameras shows Brooks turning as he runs and possibly aiming a taser at the officers before one of them fires his gun and the 27-year-old falls to the ground. The police department has fired Rolfe, the officer who allegedly shot and killed Brooks, while Brosnan was put on administrative leave. The killing of Brooks and his encounter with the two white officers ignited fiery protests in Atlanta and prompted the city's police chief to resign. Meanwhile, authorities on Sunday announced a $10,000 reward to identify those responsible for setting fire to the Wendy's restaurant where the incident took place.
And officials in New York are in disagreement. New York's governor is threatening to pause reopening for areas that aren't enforcing safety guidelines. But New York City's mayor is firing back.
New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio fired back at New York Governor Andrew Cuomo on Sunday. A City Hall spokesperson told Fox News via email they don't believe imprisoning people or taking away their livelihood is the answer. This response was over Cuomo threatening earlier in the day to reinstate closings in areas that failed to enforce regulations.
If we have a high number of violations of the policy, yes, there is a very real possibility that we would roll back the reopening in those areas.
The governor says the state received 25,000 complaints over reopening violations. He singled out Manhattan and the Hamptons as problem areas. The warning comes a day after he criticized a Twitter video. It showed people tightly packed on a New York City street, many without masks. The governor says it's better to tackle this at a local level before going statewide. He called on local officials to stop allowing large gatherings, saying it could spread the virus.
Enforce the law. You have large gatherings that are in violation of the law. This will most probably lead to a spread of the virus. Do your job and enforce the law. If you do not, and this continues, we would have no choice but to take state action.
Cuomo said the state is prepared to take action against individuals who violate open container laws, as well as restaurants and bars violating terms of their licenses.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture says about 40,000 pounds of ground beef are being recalled. According to the Food Safety and Inspection Service, the meat might contain E. coli. The 7 affected products are from Lakeside Refrigerated Services in New Jersey. The company produced them June 1st and distributed them nationwide. The products have the establishment number 46841. A detailed list of recalled products is on the FSIS website. And it's been a tough year for high school seniors. The virus canceled many activities, including graduation ceremonies. But one high school in New Hampshire gave 2020 grads an unforgettable send-off.
Seniors at Kennett High School in North Conway, New Hampshire, were faced with not having a graduation ceremony this year. That changed when the local ski area let them have their procession on the chairlift.
I'm really excited.
It's a very creative solution to this current situation.
We get to graduate on top of a mountain. given everything that's been going on, we really wanted to do something special for our students. Let's get Jeremiah on the chairlift, trying not to just substitute graduation, but really reimagine what it could be. We were able to celebrate and honor our students in a way that is unique and at the same time allows us to maintain all the safety precautions we need to do.
Our next member of Kent High School's 2020 graduating class is Brianna Goldblatt Jackson Gordon.
For the past 3 months, we've had to do everything differently. We were dealing with a pandemic.
It was fantastic.
Awesome. Beautiful.
Get there differently.
It was awesome. We got to see people coming up and down, and so it was a really great experience getting to, even though we're not next to each other, getting to see our friends was really cool.
An example that having to do things differently can sometimes bring new and creative results.
And still to come, a district in Beijing is on lockdown again after a cluster of CCP virus cases broke out. Residents are worried as virus cases continue to surge there. That and more after the break.
Hello there. Doesn't it feel like we're moving further away from the very values that our republic was built upon? And the media in our country have just been adding fuel to the flame, which is why you need to try The Epoch Times. It's pure, honest journalism that's restoring traditional values and reports the news with no spin, no hidden agendas, and no false narratives. So if you want to know the truth about the FISA abuse that took place during the 2016 election, or how socialist and communist ideologies have been infiltrating our society, or how the Chinese Communist Party's cover-up led to this global pandemic, and so much more, then you need to try The Epoch Times. And for a limited time, you can try the paper yourself for a full month for just $1, and we'll send you a very special gift. A 58-page magazine that investigates the truth behind the Chinese Communist Party's cover-up of the virus. So go to readepoch.com, try The Epoch Times, get your free gift, and stay truly informed.
A huge wholesale food market in Beijing is closed, with a second day of record-high CCP virus cases and no clear source of the cluster.
Security is tight around a massive Beijing food market that's been linked to a recent surge in COVID-19 cases. The city reported 36 new infections on Monday, a second consecutive day of record numbers, creating the biggest concentration of infections in the city since February. The cases have been linked to the NTD wholesale food market. It's closed to the public and tens of thousands of people living nearby are being tested. NTD is vast. It claims to be the largest agricultural wholesale market in Asia. It supplies 80% of Beijing's vegetables and meat, over an area roughly the size of 160 football pitches. Some provincial governments are warning residents not to travel to the capital. Liaoning and Hebei province have reported a handful of cases connected to Beijing. Accountant Ms. Han says the situation is of concern.
I would be lying if I said I wasn't worried. I came to Beijing on the 13th. If this was one day later, then I definitely wouldn't be able to come and find an internship.
The origin of this outbreak has not yet been identified.
And an explosion rocked a highway in southeastern China over the weekend when a tanker truck driving along it blew up. The accident reportedly killed 19 people and injured close to 200, including 25 that were seriously injured.
A tanker carrying liquefied petroleum gas exploded on a highway exit in Zhejiang province. A second explosion followed when the truck's gaseous cargo reached a nearby factory. The blast sent flames and a cloud of smoke high into the air. Locals say it destroyed much of a nearby village, causing residential buildings and factories to collapse. Nearly 200 people are receiving emergency care in nearby hospitals. Video filmed by a local resident shows scorched trees and grass where the blast ignited. Furniture and appliances inside his nearby house were also broken. Another person captured clips of small fires burning through collapsed buildings and factories. One bystander said around 10 to 20 cars were incinerated to an extent that left almost nothing behind. Almost all windows in the village were also broken. The cause of the accident is now under investigation.
Year-long pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong have evoked widespread sympathy in democratic Taiwan. Thousands of Taiwanese people who support the city's pro-democracy movement gathered in Taipei to mark 1 year since the protests began there.
More than 10 non-profit groups and thousands of people gathered in Taipei to show their support for Hong Kong's pro-democracy protesters. They also gathered to appeal to Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen to accelerate the asylum process for Hong Kongers. But Taiwan has little experience handling refugees and is scrambling to prepare. It's also working on a plan to keep out Chinese spies who might try to join the influx.
I hope that the government will clarify this matter or consider how they can limit the spy influence and at the same time continue to protect these fellow Hong Kong protesters with government policies.
Some supporters say many Taiwanese people are extremely willing to extend help to Hong Kongers.
I hope that we can provide our Hong Kong friends with some special pathways. For example, some special avenues for them to find work or other special support for their lives. Like when they get here, they can rent a place.
President Tsai Ing-wen recently became the first global leader to pledge to help Hong Kongers who escape their city due to what they see as tightening Chinese control. That includes the newly introduced so-called national security law, which pro-democracy protesters say smothers their freedom and autonomy.
A violent knife attack in Hong Kong injured a bystander who tried to intervene. The bystander, a pro-democracy protester, says he doesn't regret it.
A man injured when defending a reporter for a sister media, The Epoch Times, says he has no regrets about stepping in. The man was hospitalized with 2 severed nerves in his hand when he stepped in to try to stop the knife attack. His actions protected part-time videographer Jerry from the attacker. A man in a white shirt is wielding a knife, turning it to Jerry. The camera drops to the ground. The young man, a bystander, grabs the knife with his bare hands and stops the attack. Despite the serious injury, the man urged fellow Hong Kongers to be ready to defend their freedoms and values. His friend that accompanied him to the hospital told us his words. He warned against indifference to the ongoing fight for democracy in Hong Kong. He said if people don't bother to come out en masse to show their support and just rely on others, the effect can be contagious. Whereas huge shows of support, like the 2 million-strong pro-democracy protest last June, would prevent attacks like this one. The attacker is now held in police custody. He's a member of a pro-communist political party. He was charged with wounding and striking to cause bodily harm, as well as possessing poison.
And up next, UK government ministers say rioters will face the full force of the law, and the world tennis #1 is organizing a charity tournament in Belgrade. Find out more after the break.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
And over to Europe now. Over the weekend, clashes broke out during protests in the UK. And government ministers there say rioters will face the full force of the law. NTD's UK's Neil Woodrow has the details.
Thanks. Welcome to NTD UK, bringing you UK and European news. I'm Neil Woodrow. The UK government is urging all protesters to stay home and avoid risking a renewed spread of the CCP virus. This comes after more clashes among protest groups and police over the weekend.
Ministers say violent protesters will face the full force of the law. We should all be very mindful of the fact that these gatherings will spread this disease and put people's health at risk, and that is simply not acceptable, and we want to prevent that.
Protesters damaged historic monuments last week they say celebrate racism. This weekend, other protesters vowing to protect British culture also took to the streets. There were clashes as police tried to manage the situation.
A government plan to jail people who deface war memorials and other monuments has been backed by the opposition Labour Party. In Europe, the EU Parliament is considering suing China at the UN's highest court over Hong Kong's so-called national security law. According to a report in the South China Morning Post, the resolution says the European Parliament calls on the EU and its member states to consider filing a case before the International Court of Justice, alleging that China's decision to impose national security legislation on Hong Kong violates the Sino-British Joint Declaration. The EU Parliament's stance over Hong Kong is different from the EU Commission. The Commission is trying to reach a trade agreement with China and is reluctant to condemn Beijing. The resolution, if passed, would not be binding on the Commission or the EU's member states. To Germany. The German government will invest more than $10 billion to promote green hydrogen. They hope it will help reboot the country's economy and help end its reliance on coal. Green hydrogen is extracted from water and can be used to power engines and energy plants. It's distinct from grey, blue and turquoise hydrogen, which are extracted by different methods. More than $7 billion will go to research and market creation for hydrogen with competitive costs. It's part of Germany's over $146 billion economic stimulus package. Over $2 billion more is earmarked to build up partnerships with other countries. Green hydrogen is now a key part of Germany's strategy to replace gas and oil. And in German sport, German fans deprived of live athletics action were treated to a mini pole vaulting competition at a drive-in cinema in Düsseldorf on Friday. It was Germany's first sports event in front of spectators since the pandemic outbreak.
It wasn't fight night, but it was flight night, and it left fans pumped up. German Torben Blech won the event when he soared over a pole more than 18 feet off the ground. Fans abided by social distancing rules by watching from their cars, either live or on a giant screen, as the night settled on Düsseldorf's Auto Kino. Some honked their support, and everyone exercised their newfound quarantine levels of patience while the event was suspended for 20 minutes due to strong winds.
Moving to Serbia, world tennis number 1 Novak Djokovic is organising a charity tournament. His Adria Tour has reduced match format and is attracting about 4,000 fans.
Djokovic set up the tournament to help players get back to peak fitness after several weeks of no competition. The first leg of the tour is being held at Djokovic's tennis complex in Belgrade by the Danube River.
But, you know, life goes on, and I think we as athletes, we are looking forward to play and to compete.
Many top aces are coming to support this tournament, including Dominic Thiem, Grigor Dimitrov and Alexander Zverev.
Top tennis players are looking forward to a Grand Slam, but some think the proposed safety protocols at the US Open are too strict. The protocols include 2 weeks quarantine at the airport, no locker rooms and no showers on site. In France, for Parisians, it's rare to enjoy a moment with tourists. But now, during the post-lockdown period, the City of Lights is reserved for locals.
Returning to cafes and terraces, Parisians now have the unique opportunity to rediscover their capital without tourists.
The 4th district where I live is an area with lots of Airbnb, lots of tourists in general, but it was empty, so I could get around on my bicycle easily. No cars around, it was cool.
It's less crowded, and I feel like you can see more of the French culture, the French part of the city.
But others are used to the riverboats and double-decker buses carrying thousands. They miss the tourists.
Paris is about human contact, with lots of people, crowded cafe terraces, singers on the street, which I love, especially here in this area. So there's something missing. Something is missing.
As one of the world's most popular tourist destinations, Paris receives on average 50 million visitors per year. But today, the number is almost zero.
With France gradually lifting travel restrictions, many Parisians are keen to welcome back foreign tourists this summer. That's all for today from the NTD UK newsroom. Back to New York.
Thanks, Neil. And still to come, An Australian company takes lockdown measures in its stride. Find out more when we return. Sporting events around the world are starting up again. Some games are still being held silently without any fans, but in other stadiums, they're packed with visitors.
Rugby has returned to New Zealand and the fans are loving it. Over 40,000 of them showed up at Auckland's Eden Park, the biggest crowd in the past 15 years. They got to see the Auckland Blues get a winning start as they beat the Wellington Hurricanes 30-20. The Australian Football League has returned as well. The first live game this year was the eagerly anticipated game between the Adelaide Crows and Port Adelaide Power, which was won by Port Adelaide Power 110-35. The state of South Australia is the only one in the country to allow fans in their stadiums, but the number is limited to 2,000. Also, Spain's top soccer league, La Liga, has returned after its 3-month break caused by the pandemic. Real Madrid played its first game after their break against Eibar, winning 3-1. They chose to play at their practice facility because their main stadium is under construction. Meanwhile, the European Football Association's Executive Committee will soon start planning how to resume the Champions and Europa League. Some changes might be made to the playoffs. Media reports suggest the Champions League final may move from Istanbul to Lisbon, Frankfurt, or Moscow. And an Olympic cyclist from Colombia was doing his usual training when he peeked behind him to see a worker from a flower farm easily keeping pace behind. He was so impressed that he equipped the farmer with a brand new bike and gear.
Theatre performances, festivals, and pop concerts are no-go right now. So one Australian company that normally builds their sets and stages has turned to manufacturing goods, seeing high demand during lockdown.
Before the coronavirus pandemic hit, craftsmen from the company Stage Kings were used to build stages and sets for live events like music festivals and Formula One races. Since gatherings of public events are on hold, so initially Stage King's managing director Jeremy Fleming had to make the hard decision to dismiss 23 staff members.
The Friday we had to tell them to leave their keys and take their tools was just horrible. It was a really terrible day, and we were on a real downer after that.
But now its staff are making desks for people working from home and has expanded the company to 56 employees.
So we put a call out to all the event workers we knew, saying we have some delivery jobs and some sanding stuff. Anyone that is interested, come and join in.
Rocio Eiras is a theatre mechanist who worked at the Sydney Opera House and for the Sydney New Year's Eve fireworks.
At the beginning, I was still hanging on gigs that I had lined up for the next couple of months. And then it got to a point that I was like, do you know what? I'm going to focus on what I'm doing now and be grateful that I do have a job right now and try to do a good job with that.
Stage Kings is not the only Australian business that has seen an opportunity to pivot. Tim Harkert, an economics fellow at the University of New South Wales, said that many Australian manufacturers switched their whole production line in a matter of weeks during the pandemic.
You have all these gin makers that are now making hand sanitizer, craft brewers doing the same. Companies like Gecko Systems in Ballarat that are now making ventilators when they were doing mineral processing. Detmolds in Adelaide, the same thing.
Tim believes that there is a community feeling or national state feeling that people will pay a premium if they know the company are employing their fellow Australians. A return to Stage King's original staging and set building business will remain on hold for now, as the managing director Jeremy Fleming thinks there won't be an international artist in Australia at least until next year. But he hopes Stage King will come back soon while expanding the furniture manufacturing business.
And that's the latest updates for now. Thank you for tuning in. You can catch up again at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Paul Graney.